What's up, guys? My name is Woody, of course, and take a look at what you're seeing in the background. This is me on my new build on my level 85 Druid, and I'm in a dungeon that is 12 levels above me and killing things pretty effortlessly, which is exactly what we're going to talk about. So, what is this build exactly? Well, this is Lightning Storm, with a lot of different twists and turns than the typical Lightning Storm builds that I've seen on max roll, D4 builds, etc. I pretty much made the Paragon board from the ground up myself. I did take a little bit of inspiration from, I believe it's RageGaming. This build is a form of Lightning Storm that, instead of using Bloodhowl and Ghostwalkers, uses Grizzly Rage as well as the Dark Howl aspect, which obviously makes Debilitating Roar a werewolf skill. This is so far from optimized that I know once it is, this will be one of the, if not the best endgame druid build in the game. Now, this is subject to change, of course, with Season 1 dropping soon and balance changes coming, but as of right now, I'm having so much fun with this new build, and I've only really been playing it for a few hours. So, let's get into it, and let me show you guys what I did. Now, I want to preface this by saying a few things, as well as reiterating a thing or two. One, this is extremely far away from being optimized. I'm still using 90% of my Stormclaw items, and I've rerolled a few things here and there and swapped a couple aspects. This could be astronomically better. Number two, if you do not have Tempest Roar, I'm really sorry, but I don't think this build's going to work for you. As a matter of fact, I know it isn't. So unfortunately, you will have to read the title a second time, because this is an endgame build, and you're going to need Tempest Roar for it, unfortunately. However, that is the only unique that is required. While Mad Wolf's Glee is extremely good offensively, it isn't so great defensively, and I chose the offensive version of this build, but there is a defensive one, so if you're using a different chest armor, you can use any defensive aspect, essentially, and you'll be good to go. So let's talk about all of the gear choices. First and foremost, like we mentioned, we have Tempest Roar. This is so our Storm skills are now also Werewolf skills. Pretty self-explanatory. Mad Wolf's Glee we pair for offense because this makes Werewolf our true form and gives us +2 ranks to all Werewolf skills, which our Storm skills now are, giving us +2 to Lightning Storm. We're using Overcharged in this situation. I have a minimum rolled Codex Power 1, and I'm still doing incredibly good damage. This is essentially just extra lightning damage and AoE damage. Now we have Disobedience, a staple for most builds. As you can see, mine's not max rolled, but it's good enough and it does the job. Here is where we have our Dark Howl aspect, which, as you can see, we're using just to make Debilitating Roar a werewolf skill, and it also immobilizes poisoned enemies, which we'll get into that a little more in the skill tree, but pretty much everything we attack is poisoned. As for our weapon, we are using Lightning Dancer, which essentially is causing Lightning Storm's critical strikes to add an extra 2,000 damage to enemies in the area. Our offhand is Runeworker's Conduit, which is also playing off of critical strikes from Storm skills, and it is essentially giving us a very, very mini conduit pylon attached to us. It's just extra damage. And every time you get a critical strike, the duration of this extends. So oftentimes I have it up at all times, as long as I'm killing something. Our amulet, we are using Retaliation, where I again don't have the best roll. However, for obvious reasons, we're using this to increase our damage when we are fortified, because, as we will get to with our skills, we are fortified quite often. Ring number 1 is going to be Dire Wolf, which is basically turning Grizzly Rage into a werewolf skill, for lack of a better way to put it. This gives us a lot of movement speed, and it gives us a pretty hefty amount of spirit cost reduction. Finally, we are using Rampaging Werebeast, which is essentially just increasing the duration of our Grizzly Rage, which is essentially when we're going to be doing the most damage. On to the skill tree, which is going to be very weird looking to a lot of people because I have a lot of plus to skills all over the place, but luckily I'm here to explain, and there's a link in the description with a D4 builds link to this, so it might be easier to read that way. Nevertheless, we're putting 1 point into Storm Strike, and we are going with Fierce Storm Strike for the vulnerable. Moving on down, we're going to take Lightning Storm, obviously, that is what this build is focused around. We want all 5 points into this, and we're going with Raging Lightning Storm for the additional Lightning Strike. You could run Primal Lightning Storm for the Immobilize, but I personally just prefer the extra Lightning Strike. There's no real reason behind it. 1 point into Heart of the Wild, mostly just to unlock the next step, but I guess the 3 maximum spirits, alright. Wild Impulses we're going to max out, another staple for Druids. This makes skills cost more spirit, but it gives us 15% increased damage, as you can see, and we're going to have a lot of extra spirit, trust me. Moving on down to the next part, we're taking 1 point in Cyclone Armor and going with Preserving Cyclone Armor. The reason we're doing this is essentially 30% damage reduction. That's the gist of it. Debilitating Roar is something we take instead of Bloodhowl because attack speed does not affect Lightning Storm, and we don't really need the spirit generation here, so we take Debilitating Roar for reducing enemies' damage dealt by 70%, as well as Innate Debilitating Roar, giving enemies a slow effect of 65% for its duration, so just extra damage, essentially. Ancestral Fortitude is an obvious choice for non-physical resistances, and Vigilance is 15% damage reduction after using a defensive skill, which these are defensive skills. So you're going to have your Cyclone Armor up, and you're going to use Debilitating Roar anytime you're in a pack, near a pack, etc., meaning this 15% damage reduction is almost always up. As far as the companion skills, the only thing we're taking is Nature's Reach, a very important skill for most druids, and it's just 9% increased damage to distant enemies, and double that if they're immobilized, slowed, stunned, etc. And as you saw earlier, we're doing some of those things. So essentially 18% multiplicative increased damage to distant enemies, which is always a good thing. On down to the Wrath skills, where a lot of our points are actually spent. So 1 point into Hurricane, and we are taking Savage Hurricane just for the damage reduction of the mobs. Now, everything else is a passive. We are going to take 3 in Elemental Exposure for making enemies vulnerable. 1 point into Charged Atmosphere, mostly to unlock the next 2, but also because every 18 seconds you get a Lightning Bolt. It's just extra damage. Electric Shock, we're going to put all 3 points in. Obvious reasons. We're immobilizing, going back to Nature's Reach, adding extra damage, etc. Bad Omen, we are adding more damage essentially. We are putting 1 point in Neurotoxin, pretty much just to unlock the next 2, but I guess slowing the enemies by 8% plays into Nature's Reach as well, so it's a win-win. We're putting 2 points into Toxic Claws for obvious reasons. Critical strikes with werewolf skills deal 15% of their base damage as poisoning damage. This is how we're applying our poison. And then we're going with 3 points into Envenom, which the base would be 30% additional critical strike damage to poisoned enemies. Our amulet is giving us +3, making this 60%. So this is honestly my favorite passive to have an amulet roll plus stats on, but there are other options, especially Nature's Reach. On to our ultimate, we're taking 3 points in Defiance for nature magic skills, dealing increased damage to elites. This is just a flat damage increase to Lightning Storm against elites. And we are taking Grizzly Rage all the way maxed out for obvious reasons. Perfect Storm is our key passive of choice because we get 1 spirit and 15% increased damage when we hit a vulnerable enemy or immobilized and slowed, which all 3 of them were doing that. So the skill tree is mostly self-explanatory. If you were to read everything and build around Lightning Storm yourself, I think you'd come to a very similar, if not the same, conclusion. I do have a link in the description, as I said before, if you want to follow this without all the extra plus to stats to see it a little clearer. But this is what I've settled on for now, and I don't plan on making any changes in the near future, but if I do, I'll put it in the pinned comment or something. The D4 builds link will always be updated though, so as long as you have that, everything will be up to date with what I find to be best from testing. Now for the bread and butter, the Paragon. I could show you this in game, but obviously I'm level 85, so I'm not quite done with it, and it's just easier to show you here. I will be honest though, it's just a way to inflate the video's time to go over these one by one, so instead of doing that, I'm just going to strongly recommend you guys check out the link in the description and follow the Paragon board from there. The only thing I will say is rush your glyphs before you worry about all of these extra legs. And by that I mean grab your legendary nodes, but ignore stuff like this. I don't think you really need to rush for the magic and rare nodes that are not in the path to the glyph. Rush your glyphs first, get the legendary nodes, and come back for these extra little legs of rare and magic nodes towards the end. This build will work way better if you're already over level 90 and have all of your renown done. That's exactly why it's an endgame build. Personally, I've decided to mess with this build before the endgame, but that's my own fault, so don't do what I did. However, if you do decide to, it's still strong enough, as you guys saw. Anyways, let's go ahead back in game. And as far as the affixes on gear, I will go ahead and add that into the notes section of the D4 builds planner. It's, again, just a way to inflate the video's length, and I don't see it as necessary on the video. I personally find it harder to follow a video explaining that stuff than to just look at the text and keep it open on my other monitor. So, again, trying to look out for you guys here and make it easier. If that isn't making it easier, I do apologize, but I don't want to make this video 20 minutes long, so with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys try this build out and enjoy it as well. It really was fun to make and test, and I'm looking forward to getting it to level 100, and yeah, I want to see the full potential this thing has. It seems really strong, and I'm really hopeful for it. So, again, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all the support recently. We're still about halfway to our 1,000 sub goal. Thank you guys so much for that. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, and I'm going to hop out of here and go lay down. Have a good one. Deuces.